I can.
Welcome to the halftime show. So Dan has left us already. That's okay. Welcome to the halftime show at
It's a chair.
slash
Nice chair.
movie party watch.
I will.
We're celebrating. This is. Did you just drink? Oh, okay, it's Dr Pepper. I thought you were drinking straight from one of your whiskeys.
I mean, the nice young.
There you go,
Bubbly.
Buble. And yes, wait, you
Oh.
both got Tyrannosaurus
You
Rex.
both got
That's
dinosaurs.
awesome. So this was supposed to happen 2 weeks ago, and then we had a power outage. So this is really supposed to celebrate the release of Haunted Attractions with Our Other Father by Norman Prentiss and Dan's debut novel, The Eater of Gods. So we're a couple weeks late, but that's okay. Why don't we, while we're semi-coherent, why don't we let Norman and Dan take the floor first, and then we'll offer a review of what we just watched. So Norman, why don't you share, because we're recording all of this, it's going to go on the Cemetery Dance YouTube. Why don't you share with us, your background to Haunted Attractions with Your Other Father. I have a few questions because obviously I've read it. So why don't you go ahead and give us the synopsis and the deal with that?
Yeah. So it's part of a series, and the concept of the series initially was that a couple who met in college, the two men, couldn't marry and kept their relationship secret. And I mean, the closet's kind of a bad thing, but I was thinking, what if something else could come out of it? And I'd been reading Jane Eyre, or rereading Jane Eyre at the time, and there's only like one supernatural moment in the whole book, and it's at the end when Rochester calls to her from like miles and miles away, and she hears him. It's like, and so I had this idea of this that maybe a couple that lived in their own world so much that they might have like a justification for a kind of telepathy. And I mean, it kind of happens in relationships anyway, the way you can predict what somebody else is going to say or maybe know what they're thinking. And so I kind of tried to take it to a little bit of a different level. And the trick of this is that that Jack in the story, who can project things into his partner's mind. He can only give things to his partner. And maybe because I'm a horror writer, or maybe just because everything has to have a catch, that the images have to be worse than life. He can't project pleasant things. They have to be horrific. And so that's how I set up the first book. And the adventures take place when the characters are younger, just out of college in the 80s. And he's telling the stories, Sean, the other father, in the story, is telling stories to the adopted daughter, Celia, who died when her other father, Jack, I'm sorry, who lived. But I mean, her other father, Jack, died when she was 4 years old. And so Sean is keeping Jack alive by telling adventures. And so there's kind of a modern day story, and there's these sort of short story type adventures, kind of standalone adventures that sort of build up to something accumulating as the books go forward. The one thing I realized, and I knew it was a series when I was writing it because I really liked the characters, but I kind of made Jack's powers very limited in the sense that he could only telegraph things to his partner, and nobody else could see it, and the projections were just visual. There was no sound or smell or taste or anything like that. And then I kind of realized I sort of painted myself in a corner, that it's so limited. Like what else? What other stories can I make? There are only like a couple ways that power could be useful, like to send a warning or to signal sort of an action on his partner's part. So the new book is I mean, it's called Haunted Attractions. I'll pull it up the old-fashioned way. The new book is kind of about places that maybe amplify Jack's power a little bit. So they go to a theater where the performances do something to people in the crowd. They go to a haunted house that somehow Jack is able to intensify or make things happen there that are more specific to their relationship. And they visit a really terrible duplication or replica of Stonehenge that somehow becomes mystical in its own sort of prankstery kind of way at the end. So that's the idea. And then the idea for the third book is that perhaps there are people with that in tandem with Jack's spirit might be able to amplify his powers. So that's kind of where I'm going with the series.
And I will say, for those who are watching this live, I did put the link in. We copied it a couple times.
We'll put it in the
chat
several times.
And then
Thank you.
we'll be posting the video later. That will also have a link.
Yeah. And I have to say, obviously, and it was kind of a foregone conclusion that we would be accepting this book, but this was actually one of the first books that I got a chance to read as the new paperback and ebook editor at Cemetery Dance. And I can say this, it's interesting because I emailed this privately to Norman as I was reading it, and I don't want to give any spoilers, but there is some darker undertones to this novel where I emailed Norman. I'm like, where are you going with this? Like, what are you doing here? And that was a really nice, like, if you're looking for like that horror vibe, the first novel certainly had some horror there, but this one really kind of twisted the knife in a couple of places where I was like, all right, Norman, where are you going with this? 'Cause I am not entirely comfortable about where you're and so that was a really great aspect. And in some ways, it's also like a novel in stories too, right?
Yeah.
You've got all of these like little stories that connect to a larger narrative.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was one of the challenges because the way I write them is I write the adventures first because I need to know like what those pieces are and how they're going to fit. And I think for the first book, I feel like the emotional part of that was the key thing for me, the Up the Frame story. And that was the thing I was really working toward. But I don't know that I like integrated the stories in as much, like where they came in. I mean, there's a twist with like how the written versions of the stories exist, but I don't. It's not like the stories themselves trigger everything that's happening in the present. It's and I think that happens more. Like I was more conscious of doing that with the second book, with the new one. I mean, it's novels and stories are really, really tough to do. I mean especially if you make the frame tale big enough, that it's not just like, a little head note in front of each story. If it really is big enough, it's very hard to kind of get the pacing right. And, so, I mean, and who knows, like I think they're going to hit people differently, but one of the things I'm aiming for with this is that the adventures themselves are kind of like pulp stories, that they're stuff might be serious in them, but there's a kind of unreality to it and a sort of snarkiness to some of the character interactions that kind of makes them read fast, I hope. And then the present day stuff has kind of a different tone. It's a little more down to earth and also maybe a little more wistful too. So that's what's going on with that. I mean, that when you're mentioning, Kevin, the darker stuff in this new book, and it was sort of it was paced to get a little more tense, I guess, as things are going. And I'd initially written a story called The Canyon of Terrible Lizards, and that's kind of why my dinosaurs are visiting here and there. But but I that was the first thing I wrote for the sequel for this new book, and it's a longish story, and then it's like it kept growing, and I'm like, ugh, and I loved it. I think it's funny. There's a like crazy rant that one character has that's like one of my favorite things I've ever written, but it grew itself out of the book in that sense. The more like I kept thinking, oh, this isn't going to work as the first story because it's too long and there's too much like spectacle. I wanted it to go from subtle and have spectacle happen later. But so I kept pushing it to later in the book. And then at some point I'm like, I just pushed it right out of the book, and just because it didn't fit, but I still liked it. So I put the full, it ended up being a novella, like a 17,000 word novella. So I put the Canyon of Terrible Lizards adventure up at Cemetery Dance online. You were kind enough at CD to host it for me. And so it's been in like 7 installments, and it's all there now to read for free if anybody wants a sample of this kind of strange story that I can tell with these characters. So.
It's interesting, Norman, hearing you say earlier on that you felt very limited by what the power could do. It's kind of interesting because that's what in the fantasy writers groups that they talk about, is that intentionally limiting what powers can do, because that really writes you into a corner, and that it forces a lot of the stress of the story, a lot of the intrigue that's there, and making characters really think and grow outside of what their limits are.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of brings it closer to, the fact that we also have powers, like we regular people, but we can't use them all the time, or they're like, some of us are good at writing, some of us are good at math, or some of us like have a window where we're awesome at sports. I never had that. But so I think that's kind of, I mean, there's something about even the fantasy elements of this that feel kind of real and maybe semi-autobiographical for me.
I'm not laughing at you. I just saw a comment in there. So Todd wrote, some of us are good at spelling, some of us are Kevin.
Todd, I'm mentally flipping you off right now. Anyway, moving on.
Go ahead, Norm.
I forgot where I was.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Todd has a way of doing that.
Well, that's recurrent in some of your other stuff. Like, even if you look at invisible fences, things like that, the idea that you have these, it's almost an ability, but it is really kind of bad. It's almost a reverse superpower. It's a really cool thing you do, and obviously, if you write it, it's worth reading. So, like, if you wrote a grocery list, I would coo and and roll around on it with delight. It's
my grocery lists are awesome.
I believe it.
I also have to say that for a long time Norman Prentiss readers, you're gonna love the character who wanders in. I was like super excited to see one of my favorite Norman Prentiss characters make an appearance in this novel, and I was like, oh, this is good. This is gonna be very good. So.
Yeah, and that character will be kind of key because he'll be one of the people that kind of has possibly an amplifying power. So that'll be good. Yeah.
All right, so let's segue over to Dan Franklin. Dan Franklin had his debut novel published in limited edition hardcover, and eventually it will be in paperback and ebook through Cemetery Dance Publications, The Eater of Gods. So Dan, why don't you share a little bit with us about The Eater of Gods?
Yeah, Norman has it. I honestly, I know I have one somewhere around here, but
I have one upstairs, so yeah.
Cheers. Someone who was started out as a thing to harass Norman about, actually. The book did, but to harass Norman and Mark Sieber. But it's the story of the main character's name is obviously Norman because I have to antagonize him at every turn in my life that I can.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. But I love archaeological horror. I love especially like the old ideas of monsters, the old ideas of things, the mythologies, the core kind of beliefs that we built on them and put on all these different action type things in movies and stuff. But these core monster ideas that were out there, the mummy, werewolf, vampires, any of these old things, Wendigo, these old mythologies are just so cool, and you can build them into the current modern day stuff, and they mesh in really well, I feel like. So it's archaeological horror based on sort of a mummy story, but It's
No time.
not the Brendan Fraser movie kind. Although I do love those movies. I'm not gonna lie, I adore them
Yeah.
deeply, deeply, deeply. But
Well,
they didn't really.
I will just say you've already sold me. Like everything you said so far, like I'm legit picking up the book.
I've
So
got a copy to send you.
They and I mean the original story was so much bleaker that although I would happily I've watched all the Brendan Fraser movies and will again because I'm just that kind of guy. But the original story was really traumatic. Those ones were really bleak and I mean it's not all miserable, but it's certainly not a particularly super upbeat book. But I like it. I thought it was fun. It was fun writing. It was fun sending it to Norman and harassing him with it. And
It was so good. I knew right away. I mean, I really liked it from the beginning.
and it was I don't know. I have all sorts of different projects piled up in the corners and stuff like that. But it was one of these that it took on a life of its own. You write it and then it starts going and doing its own thing. It didn't go anywhere that I plotted out. Like I had my little outline and all that, but it went its own ways. You're doing research and learning about these people, real people that were they tried to abolish them from history for heresies. There was all these weird mysteries that still are out there, and it was just so cool. And then I got really obsessively caught up in it, and it got really strange. And that's the cool thing about the internet. I got to harass Egyptologists. I got to go all sorts of fun stuff, and you'd skip days at work where you're just writing notes, writing down in the parking lot somewhere, and then you're like, oh, I didn't go to work today. So I'm glad it turned out good because, but no, I liked it. It's fun. I don't know how much of the story I'm supposed to advise, like reference or not. I don't really.
no, I'm interested. Tom, do you teach ancient Egyptian history? Because Tom's a history teacher.
And I was just wondering if you had a little Howard Carter, ancient curse in there too.
They reference him and they reference a curse thing. It's not completely as simple as a curse, but that is obviously has to factor in some because that was the old thing is you break into the princess or whatever the mummy's tomb and then you obviously take things and it doesn't work out for you so well when you don't end up leaving the same, but
The canary
it
dies
doesn't
first.
quite go as well for them as it does for some of the people in those ones. It's not a they chose poorly, but like the Indiana Jones people. But yeah, I mean,
There's a lot of atmosphere in it too. It's just really that's the just the sense of exploring is just really well presented in the book.
it's cool locations, it's cool stuff. I mean, it's with Eastern Libya and then there's the land of spirits. They didn't even the ancient Egyptians were afraid of going there. It's current day, but this is where the stuff is that they're looking for, and it's the blur of where you're crossing over. They believed for a long time it was crossing over from reality into a sort of pseudo reality, and it sort of goes that route. But man, I'm not particularly very well capable at social interactions. I don't really know what I'm supposed to say, but I'm.
Well, let me ask you this, because this is always I'm always interested in too. Was there a point in your research where you're like, okay, this is fascinating, but I need to draw the line here because I'm not writing a nonfiction book on Egyptian mythology. I'm trying to write a story. So like,
Yeah.
you find a point where like, this is great, but this is a rabbit hole. This is not helping me with my story.
Yeah, that was around when I got a 400 pages of textbooks on hieroglyphics, and I was reading them and practicing and then learning them so I could write in it. And then I realized, what the hell am I doing? It's been like a month since I've actually done any writing. I just have all the stuff mapped out. It looks like a crazy person, and I'm just like, all right, okay, I'm gonna cut all of that stuff. All of that got tossed out, and it ended up being about half the length. So it's a short novel. It's because it was originally massive, and I realized, no, nobody needs this except me. Nobody
Yep.
out there wants that. But
Yeah, I think we all run into that with research, is realizing that we need enough research to make it credible, but you don't want to get lost in the research. So
No,
and it's more about the characters. It's more about the idea of the main character, Norman, loses his wife to cancer, and he's picking up where she left off. So he's she was a better Egyptologist than she was better at pretty much everything, and he's trying to pick up where she left off. He's over his head trying to lead a team that he's not really equipped to lead. And when things start going out of hand, getting out of control, he doesn't really have as firm a grasp on what to do and how to handle it. And he's still caught up in thinking what his wife would do and seeing the world through the lens of his wife
Right.
and her passing. And she did not go easily. It was a really horrible way to go. So it's cancer's. I've had people in my life die from it. It's really takes a brutal way, and his mental decline, it starts matching up her and the what they're looking for, the mummy they're looking for, who's based on Kia, who is actually a real person. It was King Tut's stepmom, but she was really cool. She did some weird stuff. Nobody really knows all of what she did, but she got in some trouble. So it's kind of fun. You can sort of build in what you want her to have done, but there was the whole Atnist heresies. There's all sorts of stuff back then where basically they tried to abolish all the old Egyptian gods. They said they wanted to erase all of them, eradicate them, and replace them with one god that is very Judeo-Christian-y type. But that didn't go over well, so the populations were understandably pretty miffed that their entire culture is being deleted. So it didn't bode well for the people who supported that when they started coming to the end of their rule, and it was Akhenaten and Kia who were really big on pushing it. So Kia got made into an unperson, and Akhenaten got shoved into this tiny little grave, and nobody's actually found Kia's body. They didn't even know she really existed until they found some hidden records buried under Thebes that talked about how there was this woman who did some naughty things, and it's yours to speculate what she did, and I went with a different sort of speculation than it's most likely, but that's the fun of it.
Awesome.
So to quote the great ancient philosopher Fry, "Shut up and take my money."
All right, so
No,
yeah,
I had a question.
I had one free history class in college. I chose willingly ancient Egyptian history. So this is really intriguing to me.
so for all of our live people, go to Amazon right now and get Haunted Attractions with Your Other Father. Get the ebook, paperback, or you can get the paperback from Cemetery Dance. There it is.
And there's
There's a free story for Norman Prentiss. If you want to get the Eater of the Gods while the hardcover lasts, go to Cemetery Dance and pick that up. I think now would be a good time to take a quick break. Then we'll come back and give our review of this last segment, and then dive into the next two stories.
And for what it's worth, I'm better with writing words down than talking, so this fumbling thing isn't as much of a...
We all do that. They're going to fix it in the edit.
Cool. Just cut this entire section.
We will. Yes, I will fix it.
Just those weird jumps, like when...
Yeah, no, my camera never worked. It was such a shame. There's just this black square in the corner, and then just...
All right, so let's take a quick break, and then we'll come right back. Let me pause my... So we're back, and we have a couple more. We have a couple more questions for Todd Keisling. Now we're going to go into Kiesling. No, a couple more questions
Come
for
on.
Dan Franklin.
Fix that in the edit.
Yeah, we'll fix it in the end.
Norman, you had a question for Dan.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering, Dan, because I struggle with this myself a little bit, but when your stories are going to have something supernatural occur, how do you decide when for that to manifest?
I mean, I like putting some sort of thing that's outside of typical understanding in my stories. Eater of Gods went fully supernatural, but other stuff sort of blurs. And one of the first books I wrote was called White, and it was about the Wendigo mythology, but it's based on the idea the gun is magic to a deer. If you think about it, we say there's no magic, we deal with no magic, but there really is. Anything we don't understand that has an inordinate power over us, that's magic. I mean, from a deer's perspective, a person looks at you, you see a flash of fire, and then God smites you down. It is magic. It's just not as we think. I mean, a cell phone would be magic in older times. I don't really go that route as much, but so I like different mythologies, different things where it brings up that there's something more than what we typically understand. I mean, some stuff goes fully supernatural. Eater of Gods goes fully supernatural. The current project I'm working on, a couple other ones, Book Without Name does, but I mean, a lot of these are just manuscripts that sit in the corner and haven't actually been done anything with. But I like having that sort of edge where it's the line between what is reality and what is just a little bit more than what we're ready to or expecting to find. But
Cool.
So I'll ask a quick question, or at least look for a quick answer from you guys before we head back into our movie. Kind of opposite sides of the same coin for you guys. Norman, I was looking back at your bibliography. I think the oldest story I saw published was 2004. And Dan, this is, I think as you said, it's your debut novel here. So I have a quick question that's similar for both of you. Norman, what is not talked about a lot with the horror industry, but what's something that you've seen change a lot over the last 20 years? And Dan, what is something that's been kind of a surprise for you going into publishing? We'll start with Norman.
I mean, I think it's got to be ebooks and the internet that when the story I sold, my first story was actually connected to a message board. So it was sort of internet connected. It was, but the product was a physical book. There was not an ebook of it. Even though I think I was reading ebooks at the time on a palm reader, but I think that the change now is that, self-publishing isn't the same stigma that it was, and that there's the act of like hunting for your favorite authors in the bookstore is kind of gone, that you can just find it easily with a click, that even like 5 years ago, there was something that I'm like, why isn't this on ebook yet? And it's like, it's almost everything is now on ebook, except for Dan's Eater.
Yeah, I was going to say, except for me, but
Not yet. Well,
Not yet.
we talked about soon.
yeah. I just think there's been something of a renaissance of it. There's just so much more. Like, I don't know, growing up, I was mostly doing my stuff in the 90s, and I started reading in 90s, 2000. I was reading old stuff only. I didn't feel like there was much coming out, and it wasn't known. You couldn't find it, and now suddenly it's there. Like, people, they're making it, and it's new stuff, and it's all over. You'd see Netflix documentary or Netflix movies, miniseries based on books that are just written, and it's like, this is so cool. It's engaged. It's actually a real thing. You didn't want to be one of the kids who talked about reading horror. I mean, I wasn't exactly a social butterfly anyway. Not at all. I didn't really talk to people. I chewed on books and rocked back and forth in the corner. But even nobody really talked about horror back then. But now it's gotten such a following. I went to some farm today with my daughter, and there's a guy holding puppies, and he's wearing the hockey mask with a machete across on his shirt, and it's like, this is awesome. We talk about it now. We're able to be it, and it's so cool. It's fantastic. I love it.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you, Norman Prentiss and Dan Patrick.
Dan Patrick?
Dan Patrick. I've had to drink.
I've answered to a lot worse things than that.
Dan Franklin.
All right, so let's review the second segment of the House of Drip Blood. What do you guys think of that so far?
It's been fantastic. It's really well.
Cushing. Grand Moff Tarkin.
As you can see, we're very professional here. I've loved it. This is really well done. It's really well acted, and it's classic horror, but it's kind of like a high level of classic horror. It's just very enjoyable.
You gotta like the Wax Museum.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna love that angle. Tom?
Yeah, I did like it. I wish it could have been longer, because obviously there was some backstory to Peter Cushing and Josh Ackland's characters and this woman who was in their lives.
Yeah.
But Kevin and I were actually talking about this earlier, because this is we should really look this up when this came out, probably late 60s. This probably influenced a lot of other movies. We were thinking about the movie
Waxworks, yeah.
And maybe we got some influence from
Don't forget Tourist Trap.
Yep.
Tourist Trap.
That too. I am definitely liking it. I was kind of wishing we would see more of it, but we know we got Christopher Lee coming up. Oh, and I was the only one who recognized Josh Ackland. He was a Bond villain. He was the bad guy in Lethal Weapon 2. So rub that in all your faces.
There was a recognition in the chat.
Yes, it was. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next. What? Sorry.
Norman and Dan, do they have any comments on the
Any comments on the segment we just watched?
They really edited it down. Like, it's sharp. It tells the story quickly.
Yeah, they're not wasting time. I mean, these are kind of based almost on the the EC comic book anthologies as well. And so I think they're thinking of scenes almost like a page of a comic just to kind of get through it. So that's why you have that pace, and why you have like something happen like every like 4 minutes there's something that happens, you know. So it's just got kind of an inevitable and comforting pace, even though it's got creepy stuff going on. So
Yeah.
And Grand Moff Tarkin
1971.
definitely should have grabbed the like Morningstar Mace thing, one of the weapons that was all over the wall, and that when he's getting chased by the guy with the axe. I mean, he was gonna lose anyway, but try.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so we're going to get back to the third story in the House that Dripped Blood. Let's hit the pause button.